Welcome back to Stellar Horizons Campaign Game Playthrough, Episode 43. We are going to start the year 2137. And thanks for bearing with me on the correction video for the combat. We still got the status of the Asian fleet and the American fleet that have engaged at EO, and we'll see what happens there, but the Americans have a plan. So we're going to start off with the builds. Asians build first, and they are not building anything. Next up, the Russians, and they're also not building anything. They do have resources out at their Europa base. They could build robotic explorers, but right now they have 4 of them. Their support limit is 1, so they're just going to hold off. I think they're going to spend these resources and maybe build a couple settlements. The Americans. Well, the Americans are going to turn right back around and replace that CV8 loss by paying cash for it and building it in Earth orbit. And that is all of our builds. So transfer box movement. CV4 carrying all of this stuff arrives at Venus. Nothing. Asian CV6 arrives there. Nobody's coming into Jupiter, Saturn, but orbiters headed to Neptune, orbiter, and a flyby. It's all the transfer box movement. Okay, so we begin with the Asians movement. The Americans decide to interrupt, and they say they want to move first. So this the American fleet can move. The Asian fleet is still one fleet, and because it has reserved vehicles in it, it cannot intercept. And if the Asians moved away, the Americans wouldn't be able to intercept them. So what's going to happen here are these American ships are going to move away, and they're going to move back to the base. This CV6, however, is going to try, I guess actually it's sufficient for it to move from the EO card to this spot on the board. So when the Asians leave, it wants to intercept. The idea here is they're willing to give combat because now at the smaller size, they actually will have a tactical point advantage against this whole fleet. And they're willing to sacrifice themselves. They can definitely, 1 point of damage will kill this Asian CV7. 3 more points of damage would kill that one. And they might be able to swing that if they get a good roll on the tactics. They'll settle, the Asians can see that. The Asians will settle for just having to surrender to that one ship and flipping the 3 CVs. And if things go poorly, then the Americans can just surrender their CV6 as well. So I think that's the Americans' plan there. The other movement that the Americans are going to do are moving these CV4s back to the Jupiter base and unloading ore that will be needed for repairs. So that's what happens there. Is there other American movement? They do have the CV3 there that has not yet moved. But I think it is dangerous to send it out unescorted unless it's unless they send it off to Saturn or something. And I think they'll just give it one more turn. Now the other thing that the Americans could do, they could take 1 ore over to the Independence base and sell it I think maybe that's what the Americans will do. They're going to spend one ore, take one ore. They just want to get rid of that trade marker and get a better, hopefully get a better one. So they'll go to Callisto and they will go to the base here. Other American movement, I think that's, well, of course, they've got the CV-8 at Earth. And with the situation now, they're going to head out, go to the flyby, and go head to Mars. They can blockade the Asian Mars base with the CV-8, and I'm not sure, we'll have to see now, you know, do the Asians want to send those from Jupiter to Mars? The distance is 4. It's a 2-year trip to go engage that CV-8. They won't be able to stop and repair damage or anything like that. They'll just have to go in as they are. I think they'll try that. So I don't see any other American movements. So after that, then the Russian, I guess we move back to the Asians. So now the Asians go. So the Asians are, well, this guy is going to move to the Tara base. And I'm not sure what it, we're just going to unload everything right now, and then we'll figure out what that ship might take back with it. That CV-4 will remain to mine. This guy is going to stay here and mine resources. So the Asian fleet, I'm going to get rid of this marker. The Asian fleet moves out to EO and starts to leave. And when it makes the move to leave, the American ship attempts to intercept it. So the interception roll starts off at a 4 and then goes to 5, 6, 7, 8. Both sides are rolling a die. 8 or less. The American drone is still present, so they get to subtract 1. How many drones do these guys have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the American or the Asians will get to subtract 2 from their die roll. So let's do the search roll. Yeah. Search roll. Asians are red. Okay, so the Asians have an advantage there. The Americans are at 7, and the Asians are at 4. Minus 2 is 2. 7 to 2. So that'll be 5 tactics points for the Asians, but they're going to get, when we actually go to calculate the final tactics points, we add up the values, and that's 7, 7, and so that's, each of those is 1, and that these 3 make 2 more. So that's 4 tactics points, and that's a CV-6. So that does not provide 1. So the difference that we just had, let's make sure, 2 to 7, yeah, 5 points in the Asians' favor is now 1 in the Asians' favor. So the Asians cannot choose to avoid combat. Either side could surrender. The Americans are not going to get to call any shots, though, but they would get enough. I think the Americans start off with a strength of 6. There's a tech plus 5. They get another plus 4. So 6 plus 5 plus 4. is 15. So they start off on the 15 and add a D10. So they're guaranteed, looks like, to get at least 5 hits. But they would only get to assign, say they get 5 hits, they'd get to assign 3 of them themselves. If they get to assign, well, yeah, and the Asians are going to get to, with the 1 tactics point, take that back down. So whatever we see here, I'm just looking, so yeah, minimum 6. I could have as high as a 28, which would be 9. So somewhere between 6 and 9 hits. Oh, that's before, never mind. That's before the damage reduction of the fighters. So that's not, and we said that they had 4 drones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be probably just enough. Okay, that doesn't look good. By the same token, let's see here, what kind of strength are the Asians? Let's look at it from the American standpoint. Combat strength. This is maybe a little hasty, but let's roll with it. So that's a strength of 6 and 1 and 1. So we're 8 plus 5 is 13. And another 5 is 18. Plus 5 for the tech, 23. So the Asians start off with 7 damage and could go somewhere in the range of 7 to 11 damage. So that's the CV6 will get to subtract 1 for the fighter, or they could do, I guess they could always, if they're going for it, they're going to use it as a bomber. Is this a good trade? It'll be a 1 victory point. If they just take the CV7 out, it's a 1 victory point advantage to the Americans. And then both sides have to rebuild. From a resource standpoint, a couple of resources. So, I think the Americans are in for the combat. The question is, do the Asians want to lose the CV7 or get it fixed? Here's the other thing. If the Asians surrender, they're not going to be able to go intercept the American CV8. And I think that they could probably drive that CV8 off. So the Asians are going to stick with it. We're going to end up with another combat. Okay, so the Asians have 1 tactics point. So let's see here. The Asians have to use all their fighters for all their drones. So they've got 1 drone, 2 drones. We said 4 drones, and those are all fighters. That's 4 damage reduction. And the Americans are going to use their drone as a bomber to add a damage. So let's roll. And the Americans got a 9. Get my little sticky pad here. Let's see what we're looking at. We'll bring the American over here. So the Americans, we said, I'm going to have to recalculate again. That's 6 plus 5 plus 4. 9, 15. 15 plus 9 is 24? No. Yes. 7 hits. So the Americans have done 7 hits. And the Asians, what was their strength again? It is 5. Plus 5 is 10. 1 more, 11. 12. 18. Plus 5 is 23 for the tech. And a 4 is 27. 8 hits. The American 7 hits are reduced by the 4 fighters down to 3. And the 8 is reduced by 4 down to 4, but plus 1 for the bomber. So it's, no, I've done that incorrectly. Minus 4 for 7 minus 4 down to 3, but then plus 1 back up to 4. And the 8 hits just remains 8 hits. So that's pretty simple. The American ship gets destroyed. But the 4 hits, and the Asians get to call one of them with the tactics. So the Americans go first and assign a damage. And the Asians can say no and put it on something else. What will they put it on? They'll put it on this reserved guy. And then the Asians go again. And they'll put it on him again. And then the Americans go, but the Asians can't stop it, so they put the 7th damage on that guy. And then the Asians put their last damage there. So all 3 of the new damage was on reserved vehicles, so there was no okay. So this one has been destroyed. And this guy has got 4 damage now. And so, and this one's, of course, is destroyed. So let's see here. So post-combat, three victory points for a CV6 and 4 victory points for a CV7. So the Asians earned 3 victory points for the 6, and the Americans earned 4 for the 7. And then there's no new recall rolls, but both sides are going to get some engineering tech out of it. Engineering markers equal to the victory points that we just drew. So the Asians are going to get 4 engineering markers. A 1, a 1, a 2, and a 2. And then the Americans are getting 3, 2, 1, and 5. And that guy is destroyed. This guy is destroyed. And these are the remaining ships now. And they continue on to their movement, and they split up, and the reserved ship is heading back to the asteroid belt. These ships are going to head for Mars. And that's a 2-year journey. What else? I don't see any other Asian movement right now, unless... No, I think that's what's going to happen. I'll take that base marker off because we've got the ships on the board. Next up, then finally, is the Russians. So the Russians, this guy goes to the base and unloads all of this stuff at Venus. And these guys are going to head back to Earth. Other Russian stuff. Well, the Russians have these 2 combat fleets. Do they want to get involved? They can certainly do something, but it doesn't feel like things are, they're not sure how it's going to play out, so they're not going to make a play right now. I mean, they could head to Mars as well. Of course, the only way they would actually be able to help at Mars is if the Americans attacked the Asians, and I'm not sure that'll happen. But if it goes to war, well, it still wouldn't make a difference. It would still require the Americans to attack the Asians. Let's see here. This Russian got flipped, so he's coming back to the base. And I think that is all of the Russians' movements. Again, we don't have anything there. Nobody was launching anything. Did I forget to do any? Nope. I didn't forget to launch any resources from bases or anything like that. So, oh crap. I knocked my political markers, or my foreign relations things around a little bit, but I think I've got it back correct. Okay. What is next? Combat phase. That was just movement. Is there any combat? No. Not at this time. So next up, explorations, starting with the Americans. The Americans do not have a telescope. Is that right? I guess so. Okay. Then that puts us all the way out to here. Sorry, I've got rule books all over the place. American orbiter can't do anything. This does, though, and so does the rover. So they've got an orbiter and a rover. The orbiter will target the Kuiper belt. It's a 4 plus 4 is 8. I was going to say these exploration rolls seem a little mundane, coming back from just rolling combat. 3%, so there's a malfunction and an 8, so a success. So physics, and then an engineering marker. Physics is a 2, engineering is a 2. And that orbiter comes off. The rover is a 7 plus 6, 13. (51) and 6, so 1 physics marker for how make 2. And that's all the Americans' explorations. Next up, the Russians. They have an orbiter. The orbiter is a 3, plus 3 is 6. A 12 and a 9. The orbiter is out. And that gets the Russians an engineering marker. 2. Russian telescope targeting deep space, which is still a 3 after its halving. So 3, 3, 6. 73 and 3. Physics for deep space is 2. Other Russian exploration, not the orbiter, but the flyby can do it. The flyby is a 4, and it will target Pluto, which is a 5. So it's 9 minus 2. 7. 75 and 2, another physics. It's a 1. That's all of the Russians' explorations. Asians, orbiter 6 at the sun, a 2% and a 9, so another engineering marker, which is a 3. And that orbiter is done. Telescope to deep space astronomy is a 6. 23 and 1, so that's a success. Physics is 1. No depletion there. Do the Asians have anything else? They've got an orbiter which has not arrived, so they're done with explorations. Remote mining, starting with the Americans. I don't think they have any. Nope. Next up, the Russians. They don't have any either. And so then finally the Asians, and they do. Let's do Vesta first. It's a 7 for ore. Looks a little cocked. They got a 1 though in the red. Oh, 5%. So they are recalled. They're getting 3 ore, and then they're flipping and earning a biology. Biology marker is a 1. Over here, that is, they're doing fuel, so that's a 9 for fuel. 53 and 4, 2 fuel. That's all of the remote mining. Next up, trade and base construction. I think the only trade that we've got going on this time is over here with the Americans. The Asians could buy fuel there. I'm not sure that they don't have any money, so they're not. Oh, so yeah, the Asians do have trade. So the Americans are selling 1 ore here for $2 billion. Just to get rid of that. I guess they could have sold 2. I'm not sure that they wanted to deplete their ore there anymore. The Asians. All right, the Asians are going to sell supplies at the asteroid belt. So they've got 6 fuel. They're going to sell all 8. Gives them 2 back here. Pull that marker off, and that's $16 billion. So with the 16 billion, 8 and 9 is 17. Huh. They're $1 away from being able to buy back their CV7. Which base is this? Oh, that's Jupiter. I was going to say Jupiter. Well, that's the asteroid belt. They could build a launch vehicle 1 at either one of these spots and shoot some resources back to Earth next turn and give them enough cash. The cash plus just a couple of resources would be enough for the Asians to get to CV7, but they won't be able to get it next turn, they would have to wait until the last turn of the decade. So it's not going to arrive in time to, wouldn't be able to do anything to change what's going to happen here. So I think those are the trades. Base construction. The Americans don't have any. They've got a bunch of resources, but they need to repair some damage, and anything else they're gonna save. The Russians, however, do want to build a settlement on Venus. That takes them to 6. And they're also going to build a settlement. I think. Yeah. I'm kind of iffy on this one. Is it worth building a settlement, or would they rather just hold on to the resources, especially that ore? I think they're going to hold on. I changed their mind there. Let's change. Let's leave 1. Change that out with a 5, and change those two to 2. And that stacks a little better. Okay. They'd rather be ready to go at the beginning of the next decade for creating robotic explorers to send out. Or if they get some range benefits, they might be able to do something else interesting. Settlements right now, they're certainly worth points. It moves them up. They were thinking about going from the 3 settlements up to 5 so that they could have a little more trade action, but I'm not sure that that's really worth it to them. So that looks like the end of the turn. So we'll be back in a minute with the next year, 2138. Okay, and we are back with the builds for 2138. Starting with the Asians. Well, they didn't have enough cash to build their CV7, but they can build a CV6 this turn and get it to Mars, and that'll make a difference. So they'll spend the 13 billion to do that. Next up, the Russians. They're spending a fuel and a supply to ready that crude vehicle there. And I already flipped the American CV6, which was unready, and I brought all the damage over here. So there was 3 damage, so that cost 3 ore and the supply and the fuel. And that takes care of the Americans over here, and that's all that's going on for the builds. So what's next? Moves. Well, the Constitution arrives, and those guys are coming in. These guys arrive back at Earth. Arrives back at the asteroid belt. 2 orbiters walk into a bar. Uh-oh, that flyby was in the 1, now in the 1. Okay. First up for movement, Asians. Well, the Asians certainly, and this guy is at Earth. They really don't want to have Mars blockaded. They would like to get that trade marker, because that is liable to be good. They don't want to lose. They'd lose a couple of settlements. So they're going to send this guy on to Mars. And then the question is, will the Americans even hang around or just leave? This guy needs to go back to the base. So what is that CV6 doing? Well, I think it's going to end up leaving pretty much all of those resources at Mars. So I was just looking, here's what's, I'm sorry, at the asteroid belt. The original idea was to bring some, take a bunch of stuff back to Mars. At this point though, I think they're going to leave all of this. At the asteroid belt to facilitate resupply and repair. I've got one, just leave it. I could take the one to Mars, but probably better for them to head back to Earth. That's a 2-year journey. This guy needs to return to the base, and that's 5 more ore. So actually at this point, and even before this point, no, they were short an ore. So the Asians could build the CV7 here, but that would only leave them with 2 fuel and 2 supplies. Quite a bit of ore still though. They'll think about that. Depends on what happens. Any other Asian movement? I think, well, they do have enough fuel, so I think this guy's going to stay for another little while and get fuel. And that looks like all of the Asians' movements, except for they have an orbiter here that needs to make an engine check. 30. So it's good. Next up, the Russians. These guys need to move into Earth orbit. I'll just leave the supplies there. For now, I guess they can expend supplies from here. Because they're going to spend, it's going to cost like $4, $5, $6 to, they don't have any ore, so they're going to spend $6 to repair that damage, and then a fuel and a supply. They can get the supply from there. So this CV4 what do they want to do? I think they're going to send this CV4 to Mercury. Or instead they're going to send it to Earth. Okay, what was I thinking through there? So CV4, you know, these rating things, if they take 1 or 2 damage, you can put it on the cargo vessel, and maybe the cargo vessel gets recalled. But if you've got both of them over here, then, and maybe kind of cycling in a pattern, the combat ship, and you probably get some more raids in. But right now, it doesn't do it a whole lot of good to go to Mercury. So I guess we're going to try going to Earth and seeing if we can do something a little more useful. I thought about going, it could go to Mercury and mine ore, come to Earth, mine fuel. Those are all valid choices. What they really want, though, is to terraform Mars, and that's going to take supplies. I guess by bringing the CV4 back to Earth, though, they're going to set themselves up here at the end of the decade to take advantage of the trade markers. So that could make them some money, so that's worthwhile. No Russians over there. This Russian, yeah, can go for supplies. They're in good shape for supplies, so actually what they could use at Jupiter to do a load of fuel. So they're going to move out here and come into Jupiter orbit and gather resources, do fuel mining. Just keep on building up supplies or resources. And that looks like, nope, Russians have an orbiter movement of their own. 51. So I think that's all the Russians' movement. Next up, the Americans. Well, so the American now is looking at, let's just take a look at what the American's going to have to face. A healthy CV6, CV7 with 1 damage, a CV5 with 1 damage, and a CV6 with 3 damage. So it's 4 plus 6 is 10, 15, 16 combat strength plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drones. That doesn't sound like very good odds. They've managed to divide the Asians' fleet. Now, one thing the Americans could do at this point they'd like to screw with the Asians as much as they can. So that's not going to happen at Mars. But instead of going back to Jupiter, they could send the CV8 over here, and maybe this CV7 can come over here and blockade that base. This CV8 go to the flyby, head to the asteroid belt, and this CV8 will also come to the asteroid belt. Right now the Asians only have this one combat ship, CV5, so they definitely be able to lock that down. So I think that's what the Americans are going to do with those ships. The Americans are still down to CV6 from before, so they've only got the 3 combat vessels. But with that, they can blockade 2 Asian bases, and I don't think the Asians are going to be able to do anything about that. So next up, Americans, they do have their CV3 up there, and they've got a couple of 4s. So what do they want? Well, they want resources. These guys will come over back to get ore. This guy will move away from the base to mine supplies. Nobody really goes to Ganymede. Any other American movements? Yes, they have their orbiter. $45. And that looks like that's all of the movements. Okay. Combat, there is none. Exploration phase, starting with the Americans. This should be pretty simple because they are out of stuff over there. An orbiter and a flyby. So an orbiter here at Neptune is a 5. And everything is a 5, but those are -1s. This one's engineering. I think they're going to keep on going with the physics because that's they want to get that speed tech. Sorry, I got a piece of gum in my mouth. Makes me sound pretty country. So it's a 5 and 5, 10 automatic. Just rolling for the malfunction. And that happens, 13. The malfunction is a 15, if I recall. Yes. So they're getting a physics marker, 2, engineering, a 2. The American orbiter didn't last long. I didn't think there was going to be very much engineering exploration because, and there hasn't been, that's the only spot, but all the combat has generated a bunch of chits. American rover is still a 7 plus 6. Yeah, 13 still. $90 and a 2. So that's good. Physics. A 1. Next up, Russians on exploration. They still have a telescope targeting deep space. That's a 6. 83 and a 6. Physics for the Russians is a 1. Other Russian exploration, the flyby. 4, 5 is 9, -1, 8. $43.7, that's good. Physics. For Pluto is a 2. That's all of the Russians' explorations. Asians, they've got a telescope. Deep space is a 6. 67 and 10. So no malfunction, no success. The Asians still have an orbiter here. or they don't still. I think that's new. 5 plus 4 is 9. I think the Americans just had one there. So 9. 2 and a 10. So a malfunction and a success on the physics. Physics is a 1. Engineering, a 1. They don't make robotic explorers like they used to. Okay. That's all of the exploration. Remote mining, the answer is yes. Americans have 2 guys going after ore at EO. Target number is a 5. A 1, 72, so that's 3 ore. And a 9 and a 50. The 9 gets subtract, so that's 1 ore, so we'll just give them for ore. That guy's doing, nope, that's Russian over there. That American's doing supplies, and that supply number is an 8. $23, 5 minus 1, still 2 supplies for the Americans. And that's all of their remote mining. Next up, the Russians doing fuel around Jupiter. Target numbers an 11. So they got a 9, so that's 2 fuel. And then the Asians. The Asians are just only here. Also fuel at a 9. $64 and 4, 2 fuel. Brings them up to 6. All right, trades. Just looking to see what's left on the board. The Russians have that cell there. They have a cell there. I wonder if it makes sense for them. They probably should have already, they should have done it before if they wanted to get rid of both of them. They can launch one of these supplies. And in fact, we're just going to go ahead and let them do that. So we'll do a launch this turn, and then we'll do a launch next turn. So they're going to launch 1 out to the asteroid belt. $94, the rocket is recovered, so they get 1 supply out at the asteroid belt, and then they will sell it in the trade phase for $2 billion. And clear that marker. I think that's all the trades. Base construction, no. And the Asians are not doing anything, but the Russians are. 2 ore, 2 supplies, and 1 fuel. That 1 was down there. And with that, the 2 goes to a 3. That gives them 8 settlements now on Venus. And next turn, they will try to buy some supplies. See how much cash they have left over after they repair their war fleet. So that looks like all of the builds. Well, let's just go ahead and get knock out the last turn of the decade. And do I need to stop? Asians are not building anything. Americans are not building anything. Russians are not building anything. But we are doing some. So the Asians, yeah, they could build a CV7. I think they'll just wait because they'll have to pay a bunch of money and they don't need it this turn. Well, that's not true. Let's take a look. They're gonna, okay, so this is what they've got right now. They need to repair this guy for 4 damage and flip him. So that'll take that plus 1 left over, flipping it over, or flipping both those guys over. So they'll have 7 plus 1 ore is 8. Question is, do they want to get into a fight? Those 2 ships against the 2 American CV8s. That looks like a risky proposition. They can stay at the base, but the base has its own defenses. But from if they're at the base, they cannot prevent the blockade. That is a question. So they can blow. Yeah. They've got just what they need. Yeah, that's going to cost every bit. 7 1 ore, 5 supplies, 4 fuel. They could save a supply and a fuel by not readying that ship. No, I think let's see here, in for a penny, in for a pound. The Asians are going to blow the bank here. All the resources. They're going to build the CV7. And they're going to get all of that ready. Okay, so it's a more consequential turn than I thought. Okay, I'm just looking here, but we're actually just doing builds. So that was the Asians build. They've got 3 billion on Earth. Do they want to spend that and send it to the asteroid belt? And I think the answer is yes. 3 resources. I think they'll go. Where are they going to go? A supply, a fuel, and an ore. So they're going to be launching that. Out there. Okay. The Russians need to spend $4, $6, and one more dollar, $7. To ready those ships. that leaves them with 8. Is there, which will let them, they're going to spend 4 of it to buy supplies at Venus. I think that's all the Russians builds. The Americans, they've got very little money. Do the Americans want to rebuild their CV6? What's that going to cost? 7 ore, they have it. 4 supplies, they have it. 3 fuel. I think the Americans are not going to build it this turn because they, how many American ships are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Their CV support limit is 4, so right now they're paying 10 billion. So if they build that ship, they're going to end up just turning around and paying $8 billion more in support costs to have it out on the board 1 turn earlier. I think they'll wait. So that's all the builds. So into movement. We're good. Movement, transfer boxes. These guys all arrive at Mars and nobody's there. These guys have arrived, of course. And the Russian flyby. Next up, Asian movements. Well, the Asians are a little out of position. I think they'd like to leave one of these behind. And I'm guessing it's going to be, let's see here, what do the Americans have at the Redstone base? They haven't managed to build any, I don't have a defense network at all, so anything can blockade it. And the Americans don't have ore. So with that in mind, let's come back over here to the Asians. What size spaceport do they have? They've only got, they can only service CV5s. Well, since they can service CV5s, they could at least repair the damage if they had an ore. They'd kind of like to leave this one behind because it's more damaged, but I think they'll leave the CV5. So they're going to leave the CV5, and the rest of these are going to head for the asteroid belt. Now the Asians are blockading the Americans. And we'll see who ends up blockading who at the asteroid belt. Yeah, so with that, the Asians are going to come out and invite combat. The CV4, on the other hand, is going to move over to the Spirit base. It'll be able to pick up the supplies that are about to get manufactured. Of course, the Americans could go over there instead. That's an idea. Just not press the issue. Of course, the Americans' freedom base will be blockaded. I think the Americans are going to press the issue. Any other Asian movement? Well, until this guy knows how this is going to shake out, it's probably safest to sit there and mine supplies. I feel like is there not another Asian CV4 somewhere? There's that one. Oh wait, that's what this one is. Okay, I'm just losing track. 2 CV4s and the CV6 that doesn't mine. Okay, Russian movement. Did we miss anything on the Americans? I don't think so. Russian movement. Well, the Russians. I'm gonna head back to Mercury. I guess they can leave. Maybe it makes sense for them to leave these resources just sitting on Earth here. This guy can pick them up. At the beginning of the next turn. They'll make their way to Venus eventually. Okay, what's next? So that's those 3 Russians. We've got that Russian there, and those 2 continuing to sit. Okay, I think that's Russians' movement. Americans. Well, the Americans are willing to play. They've got 2 more strength and 3 more drones. And their ships are tougher. Yeah, I guess the Asians are willing to give it a shot. If they get a good tactics roll, then they can stick with it, and otherwise they can just surrender. Let's see here, what did we forget to do though with movements? Here's what we forgot. Launch those resources before the... now here's an interesting... Nope. Okay, so here's how I'm interpreting the rules. So the base is... When the Asians launch this... We're doing that. 49. We don't actually trace movement for these resources. But... if the Americans had actually been here and blockading the base, then we would roll an interception. Otherwise, we do not. So even though they're coming in through the flyby, the resources squeak by. And only if they are actively blockading the base that's either launching or... Well, certainly if they're blockading the base that's receiving them. Launching them, it may not be symmetric, because I think you are supposed to, if I recall what Andrew said, you're supposed to trace effectively like the LV out to the flyby box. But these were being received, and so that's my take on reading the rules. Anyway, those resources made it to Tara. Also, the Russians were going to, on their move, launch 1 supply. To this base. Coming from Jupiter. 24. The LV1 is not recovered, but the supply made it. So they'll have to rebuild the LV-1 here, or whatever they want to build. Okay, we were doing Americans movements. We got those. Oh, anyway, CV8's moved in. CV6 is staying. Those guys are going to stay in mine. That guy's going to stay in mine. And so that is all of the Americans movements. So combat phase. The Americans first, and they're going to search for the Asians. Americans get to subtract. They've got 5 drones, so they get to subtract 2 from their die roll. Asians get to subtract 1. Target number, so here 4, 5, 6. So it's possible that nothing happens, and I guess both sides could mutually blockade each other. Black die Americans, red die Asians. Americans got a 10, Asians an 8. What did we say the target number was? 4, 5, 6. Guess what? The Asians with their -1 is a 7, and the Americans with 10 minus 2 is an 8. So, no contact. So now, do the Asians want to go again? Yes, because the Asians I think would rather, do they want to risk? Actually, I'm just looking at the situation here. Maybe they don't want to risk it. They've got a big fleet coming. Maybe they press their luck enough and they'll take the blockade and they can try to pin the Americans. Although if the Americans have the initiative, they can try to withdraw before those fleets can combine. Okay, I guess we're going to see how that plays out. So the Asians are going to let it stand. That's the combat phase. What's next? Exploration, starting with the Americans. All they've got left is a rover, and that's still a 13. They got the 3, so they're getting 2 physics markers. No malfunction. 2 and a 1. Next up for exploration, the Russians. They have a telescope. That's a 6 for deep space. 6 and a 7%. So physics and then the engineering marker. A 1, a 2, and the Russian telescope comes off. Russian orbiter and flyby. Okay. Orbiter is a 3. I feel like, I think I forgot to do that. Yeah, I don't remember rolling an 8. I guess we're going to give the Russian I guess we did the Americans but not the Russians. The Russians want engineering. or physics. Russians are going to go for the engineering. Sorry, for the, so that's a 5 plus 8 minus 1, 7. $22. That's okay. I think they're right. And a 5. So that's a success for engineering. And then we're going to let them go again. I got a 2. I'll put a pin in it, but pretty sure that we did not roll that. So we're going to roll again, same thing, engineering. And that's another success. Engineering. We got a 5. So depletion. Haven't seen one of those in a while. Feels like anyway. 3, political marker. World card. Is another C-class asteroid. Life check. Looks like 3%. $97. Okay, and then the Russian flyby at the Kuiper Belt is a 4. It'll target Pluto. 5-9. Success 77. Physics is a 3. Another depletion. Political marker. Pluto's 5, drops to 4. World card. Mixed ice. Now the question is, gives a bonus to a spectrometer. Well, the Russians could build that. I'm just thinking, does a spectrometer, the Americans have more spectrometers, the Asians have a couple. Yeah, I'll swap it out. And then the life check for Pluto is 5%. So 5% life check, nope. That's all of, and an engine check for the flyby, 79, and it moves on to the scattered disk. Well, they might as well. Let's see here. It's going to be 4 plus 3 or 4. Okay, so we're looking at like 7s minus the distance. I think they'll put it in the 3 box. Asians exploration. Do they have any? They still have a telescope. 6, deep space. Nope. And the Asians don't have anything out here now. Okay. Remote mining. 2 American attempts for ore. Target number 5. A 2 minus 1 means 3 ore. 45, no recall. 55, no recall. Another 9, so another 4 ore total. And that guy's going for supplies at an 8. So 2 supplies. Russians. They had fuel, that's it. 11 for fuel. 29 and a 10. So that's still 2 fuel. No recall. All of a sudden I was just having a kind of a brain freeze, but everybody's recall rate. Actually, the Russians are down to 15%. Their crewed vehicles right now are better than their robotic explorers, which are at 18. And then the Asians. Asians have doing fuel there. So that's a 9. $36 and 3. 2 more fuel. Okay. Looks like all of the exploration phase. Trade and base construction. I think the Russians are the only ones who have anything left. So they're going to sell 1 ore, sorry, 1 supply for 2 billion. And they're going to buy, they can buy 8. So that would cost them 4 billion. So 2 plus the 2 they just earned, and that gets them 8. And we'll make it a 9. We'll take the 1 away. So that's, and that gets rid of that. Other base construction, that's trades. Base construction, no. Is there anything the Americans can do here at Freedom Base? No. Just both sides are going to end up being blockaded. The Russians are going to, I guess, start terraforming Venus. Or do they wait? They don't have very many biology points, but they've got the research stations. So the question is, does it make sense for them? The Russians are here. They're liable. Oh no, they need both of them. Okay, so they're going to go ahead and start. I was just thinking, does it make sense to wait a turn and save a resource? One on Venus. So other base construction, no. That is going to wrap up the turn and the decade. 2140 coming up. We are in the last 3 decades of the game, and the game could, as early as 2145, At the end of 2145, we'll start rolling a percentile dice. 1% in 2045 will end the game at the end of that turn, and then going to 2%, adding a percent every turn until we get to 2169. If it hasn't ended by then, it ends at 2169. So let's just take a look here. We've got Mercury, the South Americans. Of course, that base can always get destroyed. So if they roll a 10 when they're rating it, the base is destroyed. So we'll see how far that will take the Russians. Base on Venus getting terraformed. Earth. Asians still have a telescope. Not much else going on. Mars, pretty quiet, but the American base is blockaded there. Go to CV4, 2 combat fleets, more coming in. Both the Asians and the Americans are blockaded at the asteroid belt. And then the Americans are blockading the Asians out here at Europa. The Asians never did buy their trade marker. I'll have to look and see if that's supposed to... They certainly don't get a new one. They can't execute on it while they were blockaded. They probably... There was a few turns there when they weren't blockaded, but they might not have had any cash. And so I don't know if that marker stays or if it just gets pulled off in the ensuing economic phase. I'll have to check on that. Anyway, we've got other things and not a whole lot going on out here. Orbiter, rover, and a flyby. So the rate of exploration is really slowed down, although the combat generated a lot of engineering points for both the Americans and the Asians. And you know, everybody's got all these physics points, and remember, this is the second go through on the physics chits. But biology, we can see is still quite weak. The Asians picked up 6 victory points. I actually did switch it back so that we could see the difference. So I put the 2 back and did some adjustments. So they earned 6 victory points this turn. They killed a CV8 and a CV6. Seems like that should have been more. 4 plus 3 is 7. The Americans earned 5. They killed the CV7, which earned them 4 points, and then they got 1 from a pirate. And the Russians got 1 from a pirate and 6, I guess. Oh, and an asteroid. So I guess 5 successful raids. Something like that. Political points, though, the Americans did very well. The Asians ended up with 1. So I guess the Americans are probably going to want to try to push this to war, because they continue to seem to have to be just a little bit stronger than the Asians. And they can probably, you know, attack that base. Yeah, so we'll see how all that plays out. And again, you know, the Asians will throw what they can. They can do 2 attempts. This one plus the next 4 that they earn natively. They'll actually 1 for the alliance, so they have 6. So they could do 3 attempts against the Americans to push it to the left. So anyway, when we come back, we'll see how all that plays out. Thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later.